4, 3, 2, 1. I think we are live. Mr. Clayton, do you feel alive today?
Very alive. Thank you, Andy.
We've got a few people knocking on the door, so we're going to let them roll in, and then we're going to talk about Sweetspot and productivity, how to work in the spot that you're supposed to be working in and not work in the other spots. One thing you are going to have to do as you come in, so you're going to notice in the chat, there's a link to a worksheet. So make sure that you click on that link and download the worksheet. That'll also take you to a website, sweetspot.guru. So you're welcome to just go to that site. But you're going to need that worksheet for the work we're going to do today. If you can download it and print it, please do that. Or if you just need to view it. So Andy, you said it's fine if they just view it and write on a pad and paper.
Yeah, if you have a pen and paper, you can write down your answers for yourself and just use the worksheet as a reference guide.
All right, so make sure you go grab that worksheet. There's also an order, a place for Andy's new book. This is Andy and Andy show again. So Andy Clayton's new book, you can click on it and order the book after we get finished today. We are recording this, so we will have a recording available at the very end. You'll get a recap of everything that we talked about today. We have someone on that's going to be taking notes for us, so that everything will be kind of pretty and done into this really cool format and a recap, and they'll be posted on the website as a blog. And we also have Kristen McLean with us today. Do you know Kristen McLean? Does that ring a bell, Andy Clayton?
No, who is she?
She has a company called thevividinkcompany.com. You would think that was like tattoos, but it's actually not. It's a great domain for a tattoo company. Vividinkcompany.com. And what Kristen does is, if you've been to a meeting and you see the drawing of the meeting, it's the visual recap of everything that happened. So she's in the background today and she's drawing your presentation, and you'll get a copy of it. You can use it for whatever you want to. And everybody else that's listening, if you want somebody to add a little spice to a meeting, or whether it be a webinar, or if you're just having an internal office meeting and you want to make it a little bit special, go to thevividinkcompany.com and check that out. And we'll put that in the recap. So recording, recap, blog, and there's a little thank you coming in from Kristen, and Kristen is drawing the complete recap. Make sure you click in chat, download your worksheet here. So you're going to need that worksheet to go through everything that Mr. Clayton's going to take us through today. I think, is that everything covered? I'm going to give you a quick intro if that's everything.
When you click the download your worksheet here, you're going to scroll down to the blue box that will say, see what it says. It says, get your Sweetspot worksheet. So you fill in your name and your email address, and I'll give you that PDF download.
All right, Kevin Rhodes is asking, where is it? So hopefully, and that was Leah, by the way, so that voice that came out of nowhere. I thought Mr. Clayton was throwing his voice for a second. She came in to save the day as usual. So grab the worksheet. Let me give you a quick intro. You ready?
Let's do it.
So some of you may or may not know, but Andy leads Petra Coach Europe, the UK's leading scaling up coaching company, helping entrepreneurs and high growth companies to develop and deliver high growth strategies. How was that, dude? Is that good? Okay. Good. All right, let me keep going. Hang on, watch this. He has a strong entrepreneurial background. Prior to becoming a coach, he used the Rockefeller habits to successfully found, scale, and sell LNP China, the UK's largest China operations outsourcing agency, to his largest competitor. Very good. He's also a senior trainer within EO, leading new content development, and he served on boards both in Beijing and London chapters as well. So Andy's going to take us through a session today. Success in life is all about focusing on what you do well and what adds value. The path to get you there is always about eliminating what's getting in the way. This is the secret to great entrepreneurs. This is the secret that great entrepreneurs have discovered, and you can learn it too from Andy Clayton's new book, The Sweet Spot. So please make sure you go in and download that worksheet. So you're going to need that. There's a few people still missing it. Don't worry about it. He'll walk you through the whole thing. I'm sure you got a visual in your presentation too. So if you cannot get to this worksheet, that's fine. Just grab a piece of paper and a pencil. We are recording this. You can review it later. I'm going to give you the rest of the time. Take it away, Mr. Clayton.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to share with you all about Sweetspot and what it can do to help you grow and develop in your life. And I'm going to start with a little story. And this is actually from just last week. So this lady here is called Gika, and she's in Indonesia. She runs the customer service team for a very high growth company called Cambridge Masks, who are a Petra client. And the number that she's holding up there on her calculator is the combined number of hours that Gika and her team of 18 people are going to save every month based on doing this exercise. So I had done the exercise with their COO previous week. She showed the team how to do it. And in an hour and 45 minutes, 18 of them got together and they discovered a combined 3,727 hours of time saving simply by doing this simple exercise. And I share that for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because it's pretty cool, right? And it's great to see the results from such a short investment of time. But also it's to say this company are going through massive growth at the moment. They 10x'd one time in the first 3 months of this year. They're a face mask business, right? So you can imagine it's all going pretty quickly over there, and they're in the process of doing it again. So that's the second 10x in 6 months. So they're pretty busy. In fact, they're supersonically busy, and yet they have managed to find the time to take time out in order to improve their efficiency, productivity, and their alignment. And so, because sometimes people feel, you know, I'm pretty busy, Andy. Why should I spend time on an exercise like this? So, and this is really a live example just from last week. So I want to introduce you quickly to, this is Binner Candola, and he is the senior partner, runs a company called Pern Candola. They are one of the world's top consultancies on diversity and inclusivity. We've been working with them since last year. So again, a company going through a period of growth, kind of hot news at the moment. And Binner and his team have been using Sweetspot recently because they're going through a process right now of realigning the functional departments within their business. So each of the leaders of the organization is using the Sweetspot activity so that they can really figure out how they need to assign the functional units of their business. And it's based on what their own strengths and areas of greatest engagement and interest are. Now, Binner first did the exercise last year. Now, if you work out 18 people at hour 45 with that kind of time saving, it's over 200 hours per person per month. That's over 100 ROI on the time invested. So that means for every hour they spent on Sweetspot, they got over 100 hours back. Binner did the same exercise last year, and he personally got over 100-hour return on investment on doing the Sweetspot exercise. So again, it's a very simple exercise that will get you immediate benefits in terms of time saving, and also help you to think about your role and what your role needs to be within a team and how it fits into the sweet spots of those around you within the team. So you're probably wondering, what is this tool? How does it work its magic? Well, it comes down to a really simple model, which is, I'm a great lover of 4-part matrices in life. And it asks you to think about the activities in your life across a couple of axes. One is, think about the activities that you do that you have a high degree of engagement and ability and enjoyment in. So the things that you like doing, you're good at. And those that you don't like doing and have a low degree of enjoyment in. On the other axis, I want you to think about the tasks that you have and the value that they add, like the significance and the consequence. So high on the right and low on the left. And if you do that, what you get is the activities, the areas that you're spending time in your life break down into these 4 areas. And the one that obviously we want to be spending our most time in is the top right-hand corner, the sweet spot. These are the activities that you have the best results from, that give you the most engagement, that you have special abilities at, and that really deliver value in life. And at the heart of Sweetspot is this very, very simple concept that what holds us back from spending more time in our sweet spot is all the time that we are spending, willingly or otherwise, in the other 3 areas of distractions, drains, and disasters. So where did this come from? So the story of Sweetspot starts about 6-7 years ago when I was running my company in the early days back in Beijing. And I had a manager called Tiana. And Tiana, her background is finance. She's an expert finance manager. However, like many small companies, Tiana wasn't just doing finance in her role. Tiana was also doing operations and customs clearance at the port and recruitment and HR and all the various functions that we didn't have specialist people in. And so we sat down and we developed this exercise to sit down and understand, Tiana, really, like, of the areas that you're spending your time, which are the ones that are important and valuable, and where does your expertise and interests lie? Where is your sweet spot? And so we identified that for her, it was about finance. So what that meant is that finance sat in her top right-hand corner, in her sweet spot. And all the other things that she was busy doing were either drains, distractions, or disasters. And we put together a plan and it took us 2 years, but to remove those other activities so that she could focus on activities that were in her sweet spot. Now you can imagine during that period, those 2 years, progressively Tiana's results improved because she's spending her time in areas that she's good at and engaged in. Number of problems and drama reduced. She also was progressively more and more engaged in her work. She was happier. She enjoyed what she was doing because she was getting rid of the things that weren't in her sweet spot and that were really getting her down. And there's a quote from Jim Collins that I'm going to come back to later, which is, if you want to motivate people in your team, the best way of doing that is not through motivational actions per se. It's about removing the things that demotivate people. And what he says is, don't demotivate, declutter. So that's very much the mind space that we're in the sweet spot. So it took us 2 years and we got there. So Tiana's journey of travel was towards the top right-hand corner. She was always moving towards the top right-hand corner, getting rid of other things. And what we discovered then 2 years later, we did the activity again. And of course, finance then also broke down into 4 areas and we had to do the sweet spot all over. So when you reach there, it's like this recursive fractal idea that your sweet spot, this is a journey that carries on. So this is a webinar where I'd like you to start thinking about the questions that we're going to be facing. So if you could spend more time in your sweet spot, what would life be like? Would you feel more engaged? Would you have a high degree of success and productivity? So let's go back to the original question then. What is in your sweet spot? So if you pull out the worksheet that we have, you'll see there's a space in there, or you can do it on a pad of paper. And based on that description that I gave you just now, what are the activities that you're currently doing in life that you think sit within your sweet spot? So things that you're doing that you enjoy doing, you're good at doing, and are high value. And what specific activities are there that you're doing? Now, some people, when asked this question, they start with general skills, like I'm good at strategic thinking, or I'm good with people. And that's very helpful to guide you towards your answer. But what's most helpful with Sweet Spot is if you start thinking about specific activities, like I'm really good at doing appraisals of team members, and something that you're actually spending time on. And so I'd like you to make a little list of the top 2 or 3 things that you think are in your sweet spot. And then can we have people share those through the chat, Andy? Is that how we can get some response from people?
So the concept here is you want people to write down what are the things that give them energy and so give them a little clarification. What's the sweet spot again?
So it's things that you enjoy and are good at and are high value, right? So in my case, for example, I'm a coach that manages coaches, right? So in the past, my sweet spot was around coaching. These days, it's all about recruiting and managing a team of coaches rather than doing the frontline coaching myself, right? So that's where my sweet spot is now lies. It's the activity that is high value for me in my context, and also the thing that I enjoy doing and like doing and have skill and ability at.
Okay. And then once you have those things written down, write down 2 or 3 of them, if you don't mind, just share that in chat. So go to chat type a few of those things in, those things that have high value and that give you energy when you do them. We'll see what we got. Jeff Turner, I specifically want to see what you write. Stick them in there. All right, so organizing things and helping others organize their things and lives.
Janelle, can you break that into some specific activities? What kind of organizational activities is it that you get that you get involved in that sit particularly in your sweet spot?
Can you read them there, Clayton?
Yeah, so Marshall's sharing driving organizational clarity in complex engagements where future direction is unclear. What does that mean in terms of actual activities for you, Marshall?
We've got a question about Sweetspot from someone. If you want to take a quick question while it's coming.
Sure, absolutely.
So the question is, growth comes when you're outside of your comfort zone. Where does the sweet spot align with your comfort zone? So that I think the question, yeah, you kind of getting the gist of it. It's high value, what I enjoy. Is it always something around what you enjoy that in your comfort zone, or where does that come in? So how do you answer that one?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I love that question. So as a team that I'm working with at the moment, and they are a team of experts. They're psychologists. And for them to continue growing their business, they need to move out of that comfortable role that they're in and focus on areas which are less familiar to them around functional areas of the business. It's the team I mentioned just now, Candola. So areas like company strategy, sales, marketing. Now, for them, it's the distinction there is about value. There are things that they are good at doing and like doing, but are relatively of lower value than other things that they also like doing, but are more challenging because they are less familiar. So one of the challenges that people have when finding their sweet spot, and it sounds like a bit of a crazy question, but it's like, do you really want to spend more time in your sweet spot? So a lot about, there's a lot talked about flow states, right? And catching fire and books like this. And it's this idea that we all have things that we do really well and people talk about not noticing the passage of time, this sort of thing. I think with sweet spot activity is it doesn't necessarily, it feels like it's a good use of your time, but that doesn't mean it feels light. It's a feeling of intensity. Like if I spend a whole day, and this is something I've experienced a lot actually throughout lockdown where everything's gone virtual, is I'll sometimes have an entire day where I'm doing activities that really sit within my sweet spot without distraction, because I'm not traveling, I'm not doing anything else. And by the end of the day, I'm tired. I'm exhausted because it's intense. So that's where the distinction with comfort zone comes in. The sweet spot doesn't mean that you're not investing energy. Like there's an intensity there because that's usually the nature of high value activities. It's just, and so I often find that I asking questions of people, do you want to spend time in things that are distractions, the kind of hobbies that you like doing and you're good at doing, but aren't as high a value add? Or do you really want to be in your sweet spot and move to a higher value add activity?
Very cool. We got some more answers. You got a lot of detail in there now. Traveling, meeting new people, sweet spot.
Interesting.
Organizing events to help people get away from their daily routine.
Okay. So once you've identified what the activities within your sweet spot are, the next thing to do is think about how you are actually spending your time. And for most people, there's a minority of their time being spent in their sweet spot. And what that means is you're probably spending a lot of time in things that are distractions. And so what that means, things that you like doing and you're good at, but aren't as relatively high value add as what your sweet spot is. And that's different for all sorts of people. Like I say, I'm personally making a transition in terms of the high value add activity for me at the moment is less on the coaching and more on the managing and recruitment of coaches. And so, and then you've got drains, which are areas which are important and need to get done, but maybe don't sit within your skill set. And so when you do them, you underperform, or they really do feel like a drag and a drain. So I'm not great at marketing within my business. Like if I'm left in charge of marketing, it doesn't get done very well, and it drags me down. And so I have to find other people to do that for me and outperform me in that area. And then you've got disasters. And these are areas where you know it's painful and it feels like a bad use of time. Like we had an administrator leave last year, and I ended up doing boxes of materials sent out to our members. And it was rotten, you know, because I don't like doing it, don't want to be doing it, and it feels like a poor use of time. So what I'd like you to do now is to think about what are top 5 things that you're doing at the moment that don't sit in your sweet spot, like specific activities that are taking up your time that could be reduced or eliminated. Because the trick behind this, it's really a very simple idea, is that if you want to spend more time in your sweet spot, you actually have to get rid of things that are getting in the way. And that's the distractions, the drains, and the disasters. So I'd like you first off to write down what are 5 activities, specific activities that are taking up your time. And then think about how can you reduce or eliminate the time spent on them. And there are 4 ways that you can do that. And we use this mnemonic, this acronym SODA. So the first is you can either stop or solve, which means that you can set a good boundary, say no. Maybe it's getting rid of a client or a person or an activity that is a poor use of your time, or just resolving or solving an issue that's outstanding and it's continuing to absorb and suck up time. The second one is outsourcing. So that means finding a third party, an external. So in the same way that I outsource my marketing function. Now, that may be a freelancer or an outsourced agency or service, but a lot of services these days. So for example, we can all outsource our shopping these days to supermarkets because they've got delivery services. We can outsource the task of driving to Uber drivers, right? So you have to sort of think laterally sometimes around services that people can provide so that you don't have to do it. Delegating is all about finding someone in the team to hand stuff over to. Now, sometimes people shy away from this a little bit because it takes effort and energy to go delegate things. You've got to find the person, identify them, trust them, teach them how to do it, and then have some monitoring or follow-up. So even if you have a crazy return on investment on time, sometimes there's a bit of a barrier to doing that. And then finally, you can use software or automation functions in order to take tasks away from you. And that is maybe you need to learn how to use a software package, teach someone how to use a software package, or maybe it's a bit of coding that you've been meaning to do that would save a whole bunch of time for you. And what I'd like you to do is write down your top 5 areas for reducing or eliminating time, and then write down how you're going to do it. So don't just write stop, outsource, delegate, automate. Write specific reactions that you're going to take in order to reduce those the time spent in those activities. Is that clear, Andy, or do I need to clarify that a little more?
So if you go back to the slide about danger, so distraction, disasters, and drains, this is what you're looking for in that list, the things that people do that drain their energy. They don't like doing it. They have to do it. They feel like they have to do it. And then look for ways to outsource it, delegate it, automate it, get rid of it.
Right.
All right. So
exactly.
The first step is make the list. Do you find that making this list is easier than the other list? Like it's really easy for me to come up with the 10 things that I don't like doing that drain my energy, and then figuring out what the actual sweet spot is more difficult. Do you normally would you normally see that, or?
So it can be surprisingly hard for people to kind of really get their finger on what their sweet spot is. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. One is that it can be a moving target in life. Sweet spot changes. The things that I aspired to spending my time on a few years ago, and those that I want to be spending time on now, there'll be common threads because they're all built on similar set of abilities, right? But it changes. The specific activities do change as our knowledge and experience grows and changes. So it's a constant ongoing process. It's a bit like, Vern talks about when you move house and the garage or the closet gets cleaned out, right, and cluttered up. And so that's why it's a regular process and activity of refining what that is, partly because our self-awareness, I think, improves over time in life, but also because like those specific activities that when we're focusing our time on change. So yeah, it can be difficult to clarify where that sweet spot needs to be.
And easier to clarify the things that drain your energy.
Yes.
Yeah. For me, it would be like making this list in my mind. It's like I can write down 100 things that I do that I don't like doing. Just getting to the one thing that I really enjoy the most is probably a bit of a challenge. So you want to go back to the list, and do you want people to put these things in so that
absolutely, yeah, let's share some examples so that we can see what people are writing out.
If you can, look at your list that you created, the things that drain your energy, that are not highly productive, that you feel like you might just have to do. Let's put those in. And how might you either automate that or get rid of it or delegate that? What might that look like? Go ahead.
Yeah, not just the drains, also the distractions and the disasters.
Okay.
Anything from these 3 Ds. You fill them in there because they're all taking up time. And particularly focus on the ones where there is an opportunity to reduce or eliminate the time saved in a significant manner. Back to your previous question though, one place where people often go wrong, and this is where we get a little bit into the mindset of things, is I often see people getting stuck when they're thinking about their sweet spot and they say to themselves, well, I'm going to think about it and I'm going to reflect on that. And they wait for insight before they take action. And it's really the wrong way around. Even if you're not 100% sure, the best thing is to write answers in there and work towards them. And in the process of eliminating other actions and spending more time in those sweet spot activities, you will gain the insight as to whether it's a sweet spot or not. And so it's flipping that equation on its head. Insight doesn't lead to action. Action leads to insight.
That's good.
So do it and then repeat it and do it every 3 months. And through that process, you just, you hone it and you refine it and you get closer to the answer for you.
Get a few answers in here. I like that.
Good ones. Yeah.
That statement, insight doesn't lead to action. Action leads to insight. That's really good.
It's the truth.
You may not get too many people that want to put all these things in, so I don't know how much time you want to take on that.
So I see a few. So Manu has written organizing events to help people get away from their daily routine. Again, if you could be specific, well, what's the first action that you're going to take in order to make that change? I think this might have been a sweet spot activity for them. No, maybe not, right? Yeah, so scheduling meetings. How are you going to solve that? Is that an automation function? Is that something you can delegate to somebody else? Recording expenses, that's a classic one for automation. There are so many, HubDoc and Receipt Bank and stuff like that you can totally automate that. Emails is an interesting one. That one comes up a lot. Emails and meetings. And Manu's was a sweet spot one. So what I would suggest in that one is the Pareto principle. Like if you could think about the 80-20 rule, and usually if you have a lot of meetings or you have a lot of emails, there's usually either like a person or a process or a customer or some area of dysfunction that is causing the bulk of those excess emails and meetings. Emails and meetings are really just kind of symptoms. And so it's about going and figuring out is it a person or a process or a particular thing that needs to be resolved in order to reduce the burden? Okay, so I can see a few of them coming through now. So once you've identified the things that you can reduce or eliminate in order to spend more time in your sweet spot, the last step then is to write down what are the actions that you're actually going to take in order to spend more time in your sweet spot. And this is where we have to introduce this idea of the difference between like change activities and business as usual. So what that means is that if you, let's say, are wasting time doing receipts when you could be using an automated function, and let's say you solve that and you buy yourself back a few hours every week or every month, then what's a mistake is to then plow that time back into more sort of business as usual activities and find another distraction or another drain. Sometimes you actually have to take concerted action to think, right, I'm going to invest this time in spending more time in my sweet spot. So for example, if your sweet spot, I'm trying to find some examples here, is traveling and meeting new people, then write the action now of how you're actually going to spend more time traveling and meeting new people. Does that mean scheduling a trip somewhere, making an itinerary? So I just want you to spend a little bit of time now making a note of how are you going to use time that you've saved from implementing SODA in order so you can actually spend more time in your sweet spot rather than just taking on a whole bunch of more 3D activities. So it'd be great to get a few examples of things that you're planning to do there in order to spend more time in your sweet spots.
So let's get that rolling into chat. So let's just make the assumption that you've gained back 10 hours a week. How would you put that 10 hours to work into your sweet spot work?
That's right.
What is the action that you would take? And it says here on the worksheet, but take action towards your sweet spot. What's the action you would take?
I'm curious to know some of your answers then, Andy. What did you have in things to get rid of?
I didn't write things down. I was writing other different notes about some of the things you were saying, so I was keeping up with that. But I've done the ABC list for a long time, and keeps coming back to a lot of the same stuff. So what are like meetings, right? So for me, it's meetings. I don't need to be in all of those meetings. If I didn't have to be in those meetings or didn't feel like I needed to, if I could get that done without my presence, then I could focus on things that were more productive for the organization, for sure.
And what about sweet spot activities for you
then? I always say it like this: creating and building. So whatever that creating and building is, coming up with new programs, coming up with new work tools, coming up with new ways of doing things. And I've gotten to do quite a bit of that over the last couple of months, which has been energizing as opposed to, dealing with, I'm not a fix it, right? So for me, I want to be always moving forward. Anything that goes backwards in any form whatsoever, just drains my energy. It's like I want to build and create and build and create and build and create. Once it breaks on the backside, I don't want to have to deal with that part of it.
Yeah, you are very good at that. And the whole lockdown COVID-19, I think, has been a spur to more of that kind of work for you.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, for 200 days a year, usually outside of the home. So traveled, I had 180 something flights last year, or some number like that. So I got all that time back. I got half a year back.
It's huge. All right then. So, like I shared in the original story with Geeker at the outset, Sweet Spot is an activity that people individually find very beneficial because it saves them time and improves their productivity. But really it comes into its own when you start using it with a team. And for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, it's great for team members to understand one another's sweet spots. Sometimes people can be reluctant to get rid of things and hand over 3D activities because they think, I dislike this activity so much. How could anyone want to take this from me? But the way that society and teams and life works is that our 3Ds are other people's sweet spots. You've got the joy of complementarity. And so it can be very interesting for people to hear things like, oh, you know, I love doing Excel spreadsheets, from somebody who hates doing that sort of thing, or I'll take on your admin tasks. And so you get these sessions where people end up doing things what we call sweet swaps, whereby they hand over activities to each other and thereby improve the overall engagement and the productivity of the whole team. And it comes back to this idea of, on the one hand, knowing for each member in your team, what is their sweet spot. So for example, we had a coach in our team, and I often got her involved in doing little facilitation activities. And we were doing a Sweetspot activity a few months subsequently. And I was asking her about what her sweet spot was. And she said, well, let me tell you, one of the things that's not in my sweet spot is doing facilitation. Having tried it now a few times, I realized that it's not within my sweet spot. So it's important to actually sit down and have those conversations with team members so that we can understand what their sweet spots are, and also they can understand ours, because it allows us to help and craft their career development. It also means that we can help them to get rid of the things that are bothering them most, back to the Jim Collins quote here. Because what we want is for each person on the team to be constantly moving up towards their top right-hand corner. And as a visual model, people get it pretty quickly. So the teams that we work with, what happens is that Sweetspot starts entering their language quite quickly. So there's a team called Third Way Group, and they're a big design and build company in London. And when you hang around the offices there and you hear them discussing things, they will actively refuse to take on tasks from one another using words like, oh no, I'm not doing that. That's not in my sweet spot. Or when they're having appraisals with each other, they'll talk about that person's sweet spot and how they can help them to move towards it. So it's good to have that visual and that explicit model to be able to work towards. Now, I've been doing the sweet spot activities with people for a while now, and I've always found what's most interesting is, like, why don't people just do this anyway? Like, why don't we all just naturally spend more time in their sweet spot? Why is it that these guys are sitting around with 3,700 hours of time that could be saved? You know, it beggars belief in a way. And a lot of it comes down to a few things. One is the point that you raised just now, Andy, which is like, well, you know, what is my sweet spot? And people sort of question themselves, and they don't actually spend the time to think about their own areas of expertise and speciality. And they think that one day it'll come to them. And it is this idea about action leading to insight rather than the other way around. Another one that a lot of particularly entrepreneurs get stuck with is that generally the sequence of things is, if you want to remove stuff in order to focus, it's going to cost money one way or another. So for example, if you take stop, if you want to stop working with a client who is a real drag on your time, you're going to have to give up a little bit of revenue. Or if you want to let somebody go who is a problematic person, you might have to pay them compensation. Obviously, if you think about outsourcing, delegating, and automating stuff, even though there is a great ROI on those things, it takes time. You have to put the money down first before you get the payback. And so what I've learned about entrepreneurs, and really good entrepreneurs, is that they just have this mindset of being willing to take bets on their own abilities, of being willing to make those upfront investments in order to save their own time. And one way that I like to look at it is, sometimes people look at successful entrepreneurs or senior business people and they say, oh, you know, that person's got a PA. Because a PA is a great example of like delegation and sweet spot.
It's an assistant, right?
Right. Yeah, an assistant. And they say, well, you know, I look forward one day to being successful enough so that I can afford to have a PA. And so what sweet spot as a mentality kind of drives the thinking is, well, what if it's the other way around? What if the reason that that person is successful or has made a lot of money is because they've constantly had a mentality of investing to hand lower value tasks over to other people. So it's get the PA first, and then the success and the money will come. And often that's a whole change of mentality for people, particularly, like I say, when they enter entrepreneurial avenues and they have to use their own money to make bets on things. The third is to come back to what we were saying before about this idea of like, do you actually really want to be spending time in your sweet spot? Because it is a zone of intensity. And so it's very easy to get trapped in life outside of, or inside your comfort zone. And so those top left-hand corner activities, those distractions, we sometimes call them hobbies. It's like, sure, yeah, I mean, I like doing my financial spreadsheets. It's kind of a thing I enjoy doing every month. Would I rather be doing that or spending time in my sweet spot? It's my choice, you know, and am I ready to let it go yet? And then finally, at the heart of a lot of these things is, and I see this, you know, for example, guys who get promoted to a management position, and sometimes it takes time for them to, their own kind of sense of self-worth to keep up or stay in front of the position that they're in. Because at a certain level, it does involve handing things over to other people, or maybe valuing your own time for certain activities more highly than others. And a lot of people find that difficult, and it comes to issues around, you know, self-worth and, you know, is that fair? And so I find that these are some of the areas that kind of really hold people back. This was an area I wanted to ask you about, actually, Andy, because I can see you smiling from. Are these some of the things that you see as well in the teams that you work with?
Yeah, you know, Jack Daly always he used to have us write down what is our hourly rate. It's like just take your income divided by the number of hours, and then like literally he would say, anything that you can get someone else to do for less than that hourly rate, just get that done, right? So exactly. It makes total sense to look at it in that particular regard. I do think, and we get this a little bit, even with the work that we do, you probably see the same thing. We come in, there's always a little bit of pushback because you're going to, you know, like be in people's sandbox a bit playing. And they're like, hey, this is what I know. This is my job. So you know, am I working myself out of that position as a part of this process? And, you know, if I bring somebody else in and I train them up so that they can do a particular piece of this role, am I less valuable to the organization at that point? My argument with that is no, because now you can actually do things at a higher level. We can move you to places where you're actually more valuable. But as long as you're caught up in the smaller things that happen on a regular, unless you get rid of all that stuff, we're not going to be able to elevate you to the new role. Your skill set, after you've been here for a long time, or because you have this education, or because you have this experience, you should be doing higher level things. But we have to remove some of the smaller things to be able to get you to the higher level.
Yep, that's right. I remember at a talk of Jack Daly's one time, and he was giving a similar example. He was saying, this is the original sin of entrepreneurs. You must have heard this many times, but he says their sales are here and they want to get them to there. And they say, when I reach that level, then I'll hire a sales director. He says it's the wrong way around. You hire the sales director here, and that's the person that will get you there. And I remember I was listening to this one time, and I hired a sales director right off after this talk. And, you know, 6 months later, the company was 50% bigger. So that's very much the mentality. And also putting a price on your time. There's a guy I was working with in Switzerland, and he really got this. And he says it's changed his decision-making around how he spends his time. So does he choose the regular service or the express service? You know, does he cook the meal, or does he have the restaurant make the meal? He's even sold his car. You can do this in Europe because he's outsourced all of the time driving to Uber drivers and train drivers, and it's just totally changed the way that he thinks about his time. So Sweet Spot starts as an activity, an exercise that you do once. But it's an exercise to be repeated so that it's a habit. We do it with our team here once every 3 months. We'll do Sweet Spot exercise with one another. And what happens over time is that it then becomes a mindset, and you become better at saying no to things and valuing your time and being proactive on the decision, so you don't have to then go and clear out 3D activities subsequently. So a few suggestions in terms of doing it with team and making it work. So one is do it every 3 months. It's worth doing as a team, or at least doing it with some kind of a coaching buddy. It's very hard sometimes to objectively look at our own situations. So there's a whole chapter in the book around coaching and the kind of coaching questions that you can ask in order to draw out quality answers on Sweet Spot exercises. We do have a website, obviously, where you can get more information and resources, including the worksheet. And we've got professional coaches there that can support the Sweet Spot. for you. And the key thing really is, just set that date every 3 months, put it in the diary where you take that time out in order to find areas to make yourself more productive and aligned with your sweet spot activities. So I thought we'd leave some time to take questions from the participants. So I'd love to know what questions and thoughts and ideas that people have.
Yeah. So any kind of feedback, guys, that you have coming in. So was it valuable? What did you gain from it? What was your number one learning? What will you maybe go do next? You can put that in chat. If you have a direct question that you'd like to ask Mr. Clayton, put it in the Q&A box, or you can stick it in chat. We'll catch it either way. Some other pieces to this. I'd love for you to think about doing this maybe at Petra University in February as an actual segment. And then we do have your workshop that's coming up, right? So we have the workshop is August the 13th at 8 a.m. Central Time. Now you're coming to us from Oxford, so your time zone's a little bit different, but you'll be on Central Time that day. Again, that's August the 13th. There's a 2.5 hour long workshop on actually going through this in high level detail with, breaking out, and Mr. Clayton's going to lead that. So feel free to bounce over to petracoach.com and sign up for that workshop. We do have a question from Wendy. What do you recommend when eliminating a significant barrier is outside of your control? Example, devoting company resources to automate a particular process is not a priority for the business.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's challenging for if maybe you're an employee and you don't have. So in terms of mentality, one of the things I always say is about, particularly when it comes to questions around career, is to own it. Like I have a lot of conversations with people who are in executive roles, and they will say things like, I'm waiting for Ben to tell me what my next role is going to be, or I'm waiting for so-and-so. And I said to them, I'm sure Ben would really appreciate it if you sat down and told him what you think your next role should be. And because I realize this isn't directly your question, Wendy, but being super proactive in terms of owning your own career path as an employee, it's not, because sometimes people think, well, that's going to be pushy, right? Sometimes people think that's going to be in their face or disruptive in some way. Actually, it isn't. I mean, I've run my own companies. I work with many guys who run companies. We rate highly the people that come to us and say, hey, this is where I want to go next. And this is what needs to be eliminated. This is what I want to get rid of. It's like, welcome people coming in and saying those things. And so what you're saying is that there's a particular problem in the business that maybe the business isn't seeing as being enough of a problem. So what do you do about that? Well, the companies that we work with, we spend a lot of time on planning sessions together. And we always say this is absolutely the best practice of any company, is that you bring the team together and collectively identify what are the issues that the company's facing, and then how do we go about solving them together. So if that's something that's happening in the business, then you have the mechanism to raise those sorts of things. If not, then there's an issue with how the company is setting priorities. And but usually what I find, right, Wendy, my experience on this is that smart people, intelligent people, presented with the same information will draw the same conclusions. And so if there is disagreement around what priorities in a business are, it's usually because people are working off different information. People just don't have same data sets. So if you're closer to the customer, or if you have a better view as to where time is being wasted and spent, you probably have information and data sets that if other people could see, then they would reach the same conclusion as you. And so ultimately, discussions like this, they shouldn't be about positions or opinions. They should be about the information and the data that sit behind. And Andy, if you've got something to add to that one?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I say this all the time. I just want to be wowed. Like every now and then, if you brought me something like this, Wendy, and said, hey, this is the issue. This is what it costs to fix it. This is the ROI in 6 months and 9 months and 12 months, whatever, right? So if I can just see a little bit of data behind this, what is the pain that it's causing the organization that I'm not exposed to? I mean, that's a big deal, because most businesses, it's the leadership team that has to figure all those things out. we would love to have somebody bring that to our attention. I 100% agree. And to do it in not a, this is a problem, because that we hear plenty of that. This is broken, this is broken, this is broken. We hear that all the time. What we want is, hey man, this is broken. I have a solution. This is what the solution costs. And this is what the return on that investment will be. Like, give me a little bit of a business case around this thing. And it doesn't have to necessarily be dollar for dollar or pound for pound. It can be time for time, right? You just got to show me a little bit of data, and I'll appreciate the hell out of that. Oh, look at that. We got to thank you very much. No. So I made these little cards just as a reminder. So the workshop is August the 13th. So we'll go deep on this on August the 13th. Keep your questions coming in. We got a couple of minutes. Don't forget to go to thevividinkcompany.com, thevividinkcompany.com. So that's Kristen, and that'll be in the recap. You'll have that full picture of everything that we talked about. I'm going to give you the last word in just a second, but I want to tell you something cool that we're going to do in your name. Have you heard us talk about tiny superheroes before, Mr. Clayton?
Yes. Yeah. I've seen this. Yes.
Yeah. So tiny
superheroes. The capes, isn't it? The capes.
Yeah. So tiny superheroes. We met this individual. Robin is her name, and she makes these little superhero capes for kids, right? So they're these, tiny little superhero capes. And she sends these capes to kids that are dealing with disability, kids that are dealing with illness, so that they feel like a superhero, right? So her mission is to change the way disabilities in children are viewed, like starting with the view of the individual. So we're going to donate some capes, sponsor some kids in your name for spending time with us today. So you'll kind of see that, and you'll get a little bit of information about that. But I appreciate you being here and being a part of this presentation and being a part of the Petra world, man. You've done a great job over there in Europe, and we're lucky to have you as part of the Petra family and leading the European charge with the work that we do every single day. I'm going to stop there and give you the last word. You can close us out.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy. I just have two final thoughts for everyone joining today. One is, I would say, no one needs to give you permission to make changes like this in your life. It's down to you. It's in your own hands. Action starts when you choose to do so. And then the final thing is and it's back to what we were saying before about insight into yourself. Life and entrepreneurship in particular is a journey of increasing self-awareness. And that awareness does come through taking action. And I always like ancient wisdoms. And for me, the finest ancient wisdom. So Petra is Greek for rock. And there was an ancient temple in Greece called the Oracle, and it was the source of wisdom. And above the Oracle was written the words, "Know thyself." And that's ultimately what this is all about. It's about understanding yourself well enough to do things in life that keep you fulfilled and happy and successful. And in order to do that, you've got to understand yourself. And to do that, you just got to keep taking action.
I like the insight doesn't lead to action. Action leads to insight. I wrote that down on a sticky note, and I've got it on my monitor, and I'll think of you every day when I look at it. So, dude, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much.
You'll get an invitation too in a couple of days to Petra Academy. So we'd love to have you and your team join there as well. If we can do anything, let us know. And I think we got a call maybe tomorrow. So I'll chat with you again tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much.
Great to see you. Thanks for being here, everybody. If we can do anything whatsoever, please let us know. Go to petracoach.com. Look at the workshop that's coming up. Mr. Clayton's going to go deep and wide into this process for you. See you soon.